awesome. I don't know how much hours.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the August edition of the Tips and Tricks SIG. And our format will be an open forum. And then after the open forum, we can go into topics of discussion that I had sent out. Would anyone like to open up the floor with the first question or comment or topic they'd like to talk?
I'll throw out a silly one. I heard Amazon is stopping dial-up access. Not Amazon, AOL is no longer
AOL
having
has
dial-up
terminated.
access.
There is no more dial-up.
Well, there is today. It's going away, though.
Okay. When's it supposed to go away by?
I think
End of the month.
somewhere around the end of the month, maybe.
Yeah, last
All
week.
right. Anyone here use it?
I wasn't aware that it was available.
There are people in northern New England who have no other option, or at least who had no other option until recently. Their only other option now, I guess, would be 5G, cellular or fixed wireless. And fixed wireless isn't up there yet. So they'd have to do something like satellite Earthlink.
Starlink.
Starlink, I mean, not Earthlink. Not Earthlink, Starlink. Or maybe, something that uses an antenna like the dish system. But that would be terrible. Hughes, for example.
But T-Mobile and Verizon have excellent wireless, link.
Where it's available, but you go into Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, it's not up there.
I don't want to go there anyways.
But you're not the only one who's around here. I've been up there and I know just what you're talking about, Bob. When you get up in those areas, you're lucky to have anything. Even up in Wisconsin, you start getting away from metropolitan areas, and the only thing that's out there is AT&T, and that's because AT&T is the one that's connected to all the first responders. So all the first responders got to have AT&T phones to be able to be called to an accident. But that's in Wisconsin, that part that I know of.
Why don't they have it in the the upper northeast? Is it because it's so sparsely populated that they don't want to run stuff?
Two things. First of all, the topography, the mountains make it really difficult. Population density is not enough to justify. There's no profit. There's no economic incentive. The infrastructure up there is practically non-existent. Many places they don't even get public water at their houses. If you're way up there, so it's really quite a challenging environment to do business in. However, and also if they're going to try to do 5G or fixed wireless, they can't use the big towers because they have shadows from the mountains.
Here, I can drive 10 miles and as the crow flies in multiple directions and they have no cell service.
Yeah. And if that happens to your internet, you've got a problem.
Yeah, that's your only source of internet for sure.
Yeah. Whereas something like Starlink can reach into valleys.
And there's a lot of places in this country where there's no cell service. Even though those of us that live in metropolitan areas seem to believe that, yeah, that's not the case. But you start traveling, you see how spotty it can be in certain areas. And it doesn't matter if you're going east or west.
Or north or south.
Right, or north or south.
And meanwhile, the fixed wireless is coming into suburban and urban areas. They are building out the infrastructure or building it in so that you can get your internet without having a technician come by.
I'd like to know, has anyone here looked into Starlink and see what that costs? Is it
last I heard it was about $60 a month just for
Starlink?
the internet. No, it's more than that. It's $600 to buy in. And then you get the transceiver. And after that, I think it is $60 a month.
Well,
Just for
find
internet.
out. What is the monthly cost for Starlink service?
Okay, we're gonna find out. Carl's gonna,
80 to 165.
Okay, it's twice what I said.
wow.
2 or 3 times.
Residential costs are 120 a month, offers unlimited data,
Okay.
so it may be,
They initially had an offer of 60 a month. Now it's up to 120. Okay.
so there is a lower plan.
Yeah, but you don't get as much.
Well,
But
and
you
then
get
there's a
service.
roaming,
But
there's
you
a
get
roaming
service.
plan. There's a
You may-
roaming plan, which is more 150 to 165. And it depends on regional or global, you know, but it says residential is typically 120 a month. Residential light is 80.
All right. So, yeah.
Who would it, is there anyone here that would benefit from something like Starlink? What about Pete? Would that work for you?
I'm running T-Mobile on a wireless router,
Uh-huh.
and occasionally I get drop-offs. Everybody here knows that.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with either the weather or the military.
Right. Have you ever discussed this with other people
Huh.
around you? Anyone using Starlink versus what you're using?
I think if you were going to use Starlink, you'd be about 5 or 6 miles uphill from me.
Uh-huh.
There is hardly any infrastructure, and basically you're using rainwater catchment for fire protection.
Where is it next?
Okay.
So the areas that
have
you don't really have water supply, water source or something like that would be the same areas that you would probably use Starlink.
Oh, here it is.
Drew, what are you trying to tell us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm mumbling.
Okay. All right. If you're going to mumble, can you mute?
Yes.
So, Pete, what you're saying is there are places where it makes sense to have Starlink because it's just about the only option that there is.
The only game in town is right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to lower my mic level a little bit. I may have to do it through system.
Okay. Who's got the next question? Nobody. Has anyone thought about building a new machine?
I have thought about it.
I've thought about building a new machine, but I recently, since our last meeting, invested heavily into my current Windows machine, doing some upgrades. So I did some hardware upgrades, and I upgraded the operating system as well over the last couple of weeks.
And so you want to give us a clue, like where'd you go from and what'd you go to in terms of hardware changes?
Well,
like you went from an i3 to an i7, or?
Well, the laptop that I'm on is I bought it from Costco. It's an MSI gaming style laptop. It has an i9. It came with an i9, a 1 terabyte hard drive, and 32 gigs of RAM.
Wow.
And that sounds like a powerful machine, and it is. However, I like to run virtual machines, and I like to run a lot of browser tabs. And when you want to run 2 virtual machines and have browsers open, other windows open, I used up all 32 gigs of RAM. So I purchased a 64 gigabyte upgrade and popped the cover off the bottom of the laptop, replaced the 32 with 64. And then when I did that, I noticed that inside the laptop, there was an open slot for a second SSD drive. So I said, hey, I have a lot of problems storing all of my virtual machines and everything else on my 1 terabyte. So I purchased a 2 terabyte drive from Amazon and threw that in. So now I've got all my virtual machines are now resting on a 2 terabyte D drive. And after I got that done, I decided that I might consider doing some backups that I hadn't done in a long time, which is image backups. So I installed Macrium Reflect free. And during the install, I saw that there was an option to install this feature called VI Boot. And what VI Boot does is it enables you to instantly create and start and manage Microsoft Hyper-V virtual machines using one or more Macrium Reflect image files as the basis of the virtual machine. So basically, what I did is I took, and they say they support VirtualBox as well. However, VirtualBox is at version 7 right now, and they stopped being supported at version 6. VirtualBox changed something in the software, and now VirtualBox doesn't work anymore. So they only support Microsoft. So what I did was I said, all right, if I'm going to create a virtual machine, if I have a problem with my computer, and I want to create a virtual machine of my laptop, I can do that with Macrium Reflect VI Boot, and all I need is another computer to run it on. So for starters, I realized that VirtualBox wasn't going to work for me, and I only had home Windows. So the next step of the process was to upgrade from Windows 11 Home to Windows 11 Pro. I did that through Microsoft wanted $100 to upgrade from Home to Pro, and I said no. A friend of mine gave me this product key website that he has used in the past, and I purchased a Windows 11 Home to Pro upgrade license for $8 and change. And my computer is now running Windows 11 Pro. And I was then successful at being able to create a Microsoft virtual machine out of my image backup that I took with Macrium Reflect. So I don't know if anybody wants to see it or not, but I have it available to show
Yes.
what it looks like. So now the next step is to upgrade one of my other computers. And the plan is to have my top 2 computers be able to sub in for each other. So if computer A, workstation A dies, I take the backup drive and plug it into workstation B and boot up the virtual machine. And I've got my machine A back again. So let me hide these meeting controls. Hide floating meeting controls. All right. So basically, Macrium Reflect. Come on. What's going on? All right. So if I go into Macrium Reflect, where is Macrium Reflect? Here it is. Here is the Reflect, and here is the VI Boot program. So if you go into Reflect and you set up a virtual, you set up a excuse me?
You said this is in the free version?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is in the free version. So here is Macrium Reflect. And my machine, I created, you go in here and you say new, and you select your image file, and you add into here wherever the image file is of your backup. And when you're done, it shows that I have created a virtual machine called MSI Gamer 2. And the mounted image is this Macrium Reflect image file that I took the other day. And it literally only takes a matter of seconds for you to be able to go from not having a computer anymore to booting into your computer again. So if I right click on this, this Macrium Reflect VI boot program understands that I am on Pro, and it knows that Hyper-V is running, which is why it has this option that says connect. So if I say connect, it says here, this virtual machine, MSI Gamer 2, is turned off. So if I turn it on, I'm going to say continue, and it's going to start booting up the image of the laptop that I'm doing this demo on for you right now. This is a backup that I took the other day, and this is the Microsoft Hyper-V virtual machine software that's running right now. So Macrium and Microsoft integrate with each other very cleanly. I didn't have to create the virtual machine. I didn't have to do any exporting or importing or linking or open this and that. Right from inside Macrium Reflect, you can launch a Microsoft virtual machine. And this is, if you look at the logo up here, it says Drew King, and there's a picture of me with a friend of mine golfing. And if I go to my Windows start bar, here is that same picture of me and my friend golfing. So this is the machine that I'm running on right now. And I can put my PIN number in, and there I'm in. I'm booted up. I'm at the desktop right now. And I can, this is my computer. So this is kind of neat.
Hey,
And so,
Drew,
yep.
Drew, is this pulling the data off of a spinning or SSD?
SSD.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And it's a different SSD other than my C drive.
Understood.
Although, actually, no. I think that this Microsoft one is sitting on the C drive, but the Macrium Reflect image file that it's running from is on my D drive, is on my new 2 terabyte drive.
Mm-hmm.
So I am utilizing 2 hard drives to do this. So the goal when I'm done, I need to upgrade my other machine to Windows Pro. And then I'll be able to basically, I bought this whole process now cost me another $200 because I bought a external 4 terabyte hard drive that I'm using for Macrium Reflect. So right. I can just pop that hard drive off my laptop, plug it into the other one, and in a matter of seconds, I can boot my computer up again. And I thought, you know, this is a really nice feature to have that they do in this Macrium Reflect product that they allow you to use for free. So it's really neat.
Okay, I got a hypothetical question for you, Drew.
Sure.
Let's say you made an image or a backup of one machine, and then you went over to a different machine, totally different hardware configurations, and then ran that virtual machine on that. Will it work?
Well, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be transporting from my downed computer. I will have the downed computer's external SSD drive that I'll plug into a working computer. Now, all I'm looking at, I'm not looking at any virtual machine files yet. All I'm looking at right now is the image backup that I took with Macrium Reflect. And then I will go into Macrium VI boot on that machine and say, create a virtual machine from the image on this external drive I just plugged in.
I guess my neophyte question has to do with like the old concept of drivers that needed to be.
No, it's running all. This is running inside a Microsoft Hyper-V virtual machine. Everything is virtualized. Okay. So it doesn't matter what computer you had it on and which one it's plugged into.
Okay.
It's completely irrelevant. Hardware independent. So it makes for a very nice option. So when I'm done, I'll have 2 computers, and either one of them can sub in for the other if one goes down.
Is this being recorded, Sanford or Bob?
Yes.
It is?
Yep. It'll be
Because
up
I
on
had-
the YouTube channel in about 4 to 5 days.
Okay, yeah, because I had let my dog out. He was.
Oh
and
yeah,
I
this
missed-
is
I missed
Carl,
the
this is
opening.
good stuff here.
I
So
know.
if now I'm going to launch the Hyper-V Manager. This is the Microsoft management console for their Hyper-V software. And as you can see, it's created. I have MSI Gamer 2. It says that the status is running. The CPU is 2%. I've allocated it 8 gigs of RAM, and it's been running for 5 minutes. I have an Ubuntu machine that I created, and I have a Windows 11 developer environment machine that I created. What I really want to show you guys is how I did this, because if you go into the software here on the right-hand panel here, there is a thing called Quick Create. And if you click on Quick Create, and this is part of Windows 11 Pro. I didn't do anything to do this. It gives you, these are the Ubuntu versions of Linux that are available through the Microsoft Store. And what they've done is enabled me to create an Ubuntu virtual machine in literally seconds from the time I pick which one of these I want and say create virtual machine, and in about 10 seconds I've got the virtual machine. And this last entry here is the one that I want you to pay attention to. This says Windows 11 developer environment. This came with Windows Pro. I didn't do anything to do this. This evaluation copy of Windows 11 will enable you to try out Windows 11 development with an evaluation copy of Windows. The evaluation copy will expire after a predetermined amount of time, which I've determined is 3 months from the time that you create the virtual machine. And it creates a Windows 11 enterprise installation. And if I go into this machine here and I say connect to it, this is turned off. I'm going to turn it on. And it will download and have available for you in its environment everything you need to create a Windows 11 virtual machine with a 3-month trial license anytime you want it. So this is another really nice reason to upgrade to Windows Pro. This comes with Pro. And, so now once this boots up, this is a fully functional, brand new installation of Windows that I can mess around with and play with. Peter, you have a question?
I got a question. It's been a long time since I've actually made an image. You make it in Macrium, or how do you create the initial image for your file?
The initial image that I created was from Macrium Reflect, from a real live image file of my computer.
Where'd you get that Macrium Reflect? Was that from their website or a different website, Drew?
I got it from, there's a website called Geek something or other.
Major Geek.
How to Geek or Tech Geek. What was that one?
Major Geek.
Major Geek. That's where I got it from, Major Geek.
So it's actually the older version of Macrium Reflect that you use.
This is Macrium Reflect 8 free.
Yeah.
This is this is the last ever release of Macrium Reflect free.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm not doing anything that requires you invest a penny, other than the $9 that I spent to upgrade to Windows 11 Pro.
How did you do it for that low of a price? The upgrade.
I went to a website.
I mean, I've seen a lot of those websites that say, we'll give you, Windows 11 Pro for dirt cheap. And you think they're scams. Is it one of those?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
It is. Only I didn't pick it out of the blue. A friend of mine who had used it, probably he got it from someone else. Underneath my bookmarks and extras, there is a Windows, Broadcom, DocFetcher, Joplin.
With some of these sites, they collect surplus business licenses that haven't been used in deployments. And that's technically not in keeping with the terms of Microsoft licensing.
Let's see. License. Or no, let's search for the word key. Software licenses. Here it is. It's a website called validproductkey.com. And if I go into here, I will go to here, and you go to validproductkey.com, and come on. There we go. Valid product key. So here are Windows keys. So I purchased a Windows Pro upgrade, and for $8.90. And I clicked add to cart. They emailed me 2 keys. The first key was to change the addition of Windows from Home to Pro. And then the second one was the activation key. So if you go into, when you go into settings in Windows and you go into system, there is an activation page where you can change product key. And what I did is I went in here and I clicked change, and I put in the first of the 2 product keys they gave me. That product key is not the license code that activates Windows. It is merely a generic key that is related to the fact that it's a Windows Pro key rather than a home key. Microsoft has generic keys that determine the variation between the different versions of Windows. So the step 1 was to punch in the first product key they gave me and let Windows convert me from home to Pro. Once it did that, I needed to activate Windows, and that's where the second product key came in. So I then punched in the second product key, and Microsoft said, oh, look at that. We got a valid digital product key here. And it did its thing. And just like Windows Update says, we're going to update and reboot your computer. It said, we're adding new features to your computer. Don't turn it off. And about 10 minutes later, it rebooted into Pro. And that's how I did it.
Wow. Thank you for that bit of information. And then where did you find the Macrium Reflect VI?
It's part of the product.
You said it's part of Macrium
the software.
Reflect?
When you download the free version of Macrium Reflect,
yes,
and you start the installer, on the first page, there is before you say install, there's an option to enable VI boot.
But that option is only available if it detects you're running Pro.
It detects, or VirtualBox. Pro
Yeah.
or VirtualBox?
Either.
And I had VirtualBox installed.
Okay.
Only I found out that the version of VirtualBox that I had installed was unsupported. They only support VirtualBox up to 6, and I have 7. So the only option is to go with Microsoft. But that's not the end of the world, because VirtualBox has a utility, comes with a utility. Thank you, ChatGPT. You basically, what you can do is you go into the your Microsoft virtual machine, and there are options to export right here. You can export the the hard drive of a Microsoft virtual machine into a virtual file, a disk file. And then you can use a utility program. It's a command line utility that comes with VirtualBox that will convert a Microsoft VM file into a VirtualBox disk file. And then you go in and you say, I want to create a new VirtualBox virtual machine. And then when it comes time to select your hard drive, you don't say, I want to use a new hard drive. You say, I already have a pre-existing hard drive. And you plug in your converted hard drive. And then in theory, I haven't finished doing this yet. In theory, you will have a valid VirtualBox virtual machine from this same process. And then ChatGPT also alerted me that Broadcom, the owner of VMware, has a utility that allows you to convert Microsoft virtual machines into VMware virtual machines directly. And that's a product that's available for free from Broadcom. And I found the instructions for downloading and installing that. I haven't done that yet either. But there's a free program that allows you to import a Microsoft VM and convert it into a VMware VM. So that's the next thing I'll be doing in my spare time, is finding out if in fact that works and how well it works and how smoothly it works. Any other questions? So that's what I've done in the last couple of weeks.
A lot.
Can you give me the executive summary, is what this is all about? I missed the opening.
Well, it was, I started off by just by saying I had done something new since last month in terms of upgrading my machine. And then I didn't realize I was going to be doing this whole Macrium Reflect VirtualBox VMware thingamajig until after I already bought the hardware. And then I said, hey, look at this. And I said, I can use Macrium. And then I said, hey, Macrium lets me do this. Let me try that. And each day I logged on to Amazon and spent more money. And now I have a new license, new memory, new disk, new operating system, new hard drive, and a disaster recovery plan.
Was the objective to just create a machine? I'm getting a little bit caught in the weeds.
Well, the purpose of this is so that in the event one of my 2 primary computers has a catastrophic failure, or it doesn't turn on, or it for whatever reason I can't use it, I can recover using a virtual machine. That's really the concept.
Okay.
Drew, you illustrated that you had the ability to do that quick create and then create the Ubuntu different versions.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ubuntu included in that process, or do you still have to download that from somewhere?
Microsoft did it behind the scenes. When you when you say create the virtual machine, it does
Mhm.
everything that it needs to create the virtual machine.
And so it's downloading the whole OS package from somewhere in the background?
Yeah, must be.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Microsoft and Canonical, who put out Ubuntu, I have an arrangement where Ubuntu is featured in the Linux subsystem for Windows, and it's also featured in the Microsoft Store. So that's the full Ubuntu, and it's not a huge download.
Okay.
So basically, when you boot into this version of Ubuntu, it's basically the same thing as running the live boot, a live server. So it's now going to boot up the Ubuntu virtual machine that it created, and I haven't gone through and done the install of anything yet. This is just basically the same thing as booting off of a USB flash drive into a live version of the it's not a fully functional virtual machine yet. It's only the I don't know why it's not booting.
The initial install, right?
Come on.
Status running. Do you have to hit return?
Reset this virtual machine. Come on. I don't know why I have this lock.
Looks unlocked on the top.
Yeah, but I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Action, turn it off. Let me start it up again, see if it works. This was working yesterday. I don't know why it's not going into Linux. Oh well.
Start PXE over.
This almost looks like it didn't find something right.
Or there's a permissions issue.
Like it's trying to, it looks like it's trying to boot off of a network.
Maybe it is.
But it wasn't a minute ago. You know what I can do? I'll just do it this way. I'll do quick create because it only takes a second.
Yeah.
Go to Ubuntu 2204 and say create virtual machine. And now it's downloading the image.
Yeah.
Right now.
By the way, Linux permissions are different from Windows permissions, and Ubuntu has a different user from your Windows account.
Yeah, but this when I first did this the other day, the very first time that I booted that up, it came up to the login screen of Ubuntu, asking me if I would like to try it or install it.
Okay.
And then it went into the desktop. I was expecting it to do that immediately just now. So you can see this is downloading it from somewhere. I don't know where it's getting this from, but it knows where it's getting it from. And then you can create a window of a virtual machine. Now, I would not bother doing this because 2204 long-term support has been supplanted with 2404 long-term support.
Right.
So I would download that and create a virtual machine from that instead.
You mean download the ISO?
Yes.
Good plan.
When you ran it yesterday, Drew, did it ask you to set up a password in the initial stages?
No. It just came right up.
In some setups, it's passwordless.
Oh, really?
It just logs you right in.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's only true if it's like a virtual machine or a container.
Oh.
Linux by default, of course, does require a login.
While this is loading, Drew, let me ask you another question. When you got from Costco the gaming machine. I'm not familiar with them. What do you have to? It doesn't have an operating system on it. You have to load Windows in, or how does that work?
No, it came with Windows 11 Home.
Oh, it does. A gaming
Yeah,
machine does? Okay, I didn't know.
yeah.
Gaming machines usually are higher end processor, more bandwidth, higher
It
graphic
has a nice
cards,
it has a nice
graphic
video
cards.
adapter in it.
I'm sorry.
It has a nice video adapter with extra memory on it. So it's marketed for people that do gaming, although I bought it because it had an i9 processor.
So you can literally buy a gaming machine and add
Oh yeah, you've been able to
download
do
any
it.
programs you want on it. Or do I thought it was somehow limited or something in some respects to
No,
The
you
only
I could
thing,
class some
only for
machine.
gaming.
the only limitation that Windows puts on other operating systems is under Windows 11, they have to be compliant with secure boot, which Ubuntu is.
Yeah. And Microsoft Hyper-V Virtual Machine Manager knows how to create a secure boot environment.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting thing about 2204 LTS, however, depending on which Microsoft updates you've got, its bootloader contains what's called a shim, which allows it to cooperate with secure boot. That got blacklisted. 2404 fixed it. Actually, it may have been
okay.
2410, but they
Yeah.
got their shim blacklisted. So in
Okay.
some machines that didn't already have a dual boot, you may run into that issue.
So now, it's extracting the image archive and it's building the virtual machine. So you don't have this should turn into a fully functional Ubuntu machine when it's done. So if any of you are adventurous and are willing to spend the $9, you can play with this stuff as well.
So to get this Macrium Reflect VI loaded onto our existing machines that already have Macrium Reflect loaded on, we have to reinstall the product to get that option to show up.
You may have to go in and update the install. When you launch the installer for any app, sometimes before you actually start the install, they give you some options to check off and say, would I like to do an advanced install? Would I like to, customize the install? One of the optional buttons that they have on the first page of the setup is the option to check off whether you want VI boot or not. So if you installed Macrium Reflect and you did not choose to load the VI boot optionally, then you probably need to reload the software. And then Macrium on their website under Macrium Reflect /VI boot, they even have an introduction to Macrium VI boot. If you want to learn more, there's a knowledge article about Macrium VI boot and what it is and what it does. So you can learn more about it. All right, here we go. Virtual machine created successfully. And connect to it. And start it up. So this should be a fully functional Ubuntu machine that works without having to go through any of the Ubuntu stuff.
That's it. That is your bare bones Ubuntu 2204.
Bob, do you see merit in this? Is this something you'd play in?
I do things a whole lot differently. I use external enclosures And that basically means I'm using separate drives.
Okay, but could this be a alternative for you from doing that process, or you like the cleanliness of separate drives?
I don't have the system resources Drew has.
Okay,
And that means I could experience slowdowns or even crashes in Linux
right.
as a virtual machine. Or the whole machine
So,
could crash. However, I do have
Um,
16 gigabytes of RAM.
So what I will do is, if nobody has any further questions, I will
Close this down.
figure out how to unhide the meeting controls.
Just hit stop sharing.
I don't have them. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there it is. Stop share.
Towards the top somewhere.
Oh, man.
So on that
Come
screen
on,
right
where?
there, it is asking you to set up the password there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's doing a
That's the install.
that's the install. Yeah.
What you were in was the live session.
Yeah. All right. So did that stop the share?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Well,
Great
it
job,
also made-
Drew. Boy, that was
also-
a diversion.
Yeah. You weren't expecting that, were you?
You know what? That's why I run these meetings, because always somebody comes up with something that we don't know.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Very interesting. Got my my radar going on this.
But it
So what
also,
would you say the minimum
was-
requirements would be to run a Hyper-V or a update? Thunderstorms with okay. That's local weather. The 60
Well,
miles.
basically, Windows 11, I wouldn't run a machine that has less than 16 gigs in it.
Mhm.
And then you have to remember that you have to allow enough memory in your computer for you to run as the host, as well as having enough memory for the guest.
Did you
So-
say earlier you had a 200 terabyte drive?
No, 2.
Oh, two. When are you gonna get to 200?
When it
Soon
gets
as
99
they can make as soon as they make a laptop that can hold it.
Yeah.
When-
They don't
when he
have-
gets 99 more drives.
Actually, if you're willing to loan, if somebody would be willing to loan me the money, Dell has a laptop that they sell that has the ability to put in multiple hard drives. You can have up to 4 hard drives in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fully maxed out with all of the memory and hard drive space and video adapter and everything. The MSRP on it is about 12 grand.
Wow.
So
It-
I'm waiting for donations.
Carl
What's
says
the-
he'll help you out.
What's the company that made all that went up in price? They just make boards. They're all computer boards. There's hundreds of them. I think I understood there was like 200 those computer 200 or 2000 in Gemini. Their computer. It's all those. What's the name of the company with the V? I'm drawing a blank right now that made all the
What?
money. The stock went up.
Are you
last-
talking about NVIDIA?
Yeah, NVIDIA, right.
Okay.
I think they just those AR computers are just hundreds of those NVIDIA boards. I thought Gemini is supposed to have. I mentioned this on Tech for Seniors. I read it somewhere. Their machine is got like magnitude of 4 or 5 times more computers than ChatGPT, which is like next in line, and everybody else is way down the list.
Yeah, what we're talking about there are, they're not main boards. They are graphics subsystems. And you're talking about GPUs. There also is a new kind of processor called an NPU, neural processor. But the big data centers are using GPUs. And they're
Well, I
using them
just
like,
know Gemini is way magnitudes ahead of anybody else in size as far as
oh, yeah.
computing power. I mean, I was surprised.
Yeah. Google itself has always had server farms that were vastly in excess of what anybody else had.
Okay.
Except for the Air Force
use
here
it.
down in Maui.
I use it all the time. I guess I didn't tell you guys, but I had these tomato plants and they were all turning yellow and spots on the leaves. I get tomatoes, but they look like they're on Christmas trees without, the green stuff. And so I went to Gemini and I said, I got these plants yellowing from the bottom up. Well, the summary, I think, was the executive summary was 10 pages. And there was at least 30 pages of explaining all about, agricultural diseases.
There are several diseases that will cause that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for the group?
That was
For our
fascinating.
open forum. Anyone for the open
Yep.
forum?
I threw the product key code webpage into the chat just now.
Okay. Thank you, Drew.
If anybody's interested in that, they're trustworthy. Well, they're trustworthy enough. At least they got my machine running.
They got your machine. And as a disclaimer, Drew gets nothing out of this, right? You get no remuneration.
Get nothing out of it. Yeah, I bought it through using my PayPal account. So I didn't give them my credit card directly.
So it's a secure purchase. Got it.
Yeah.
When he buys a house on Maui, we'll know.
When they buy a house on Maui.
Yeah.
Okay, so
If they could buy a house with Maui, I'd be there already.
Well, Pete's already there.
I didn't buy a house.
You were going to.
The mean starter house here is at around $180,000 now. And that will get you maybe a 1-bedroom.
Yeah. Oh, talk about pricing for real estate. Here's a funny one. I was born in Long Island, New York. And the house that I was born into, my parents bought when they first got married. And they bought it for $18,000. Okay, $18,000. Less than what you would pay for a car now. And according to Zillow, that house is current retail value is over $1 million.
Wow.
Crazy. Okay, yeah. I need to keep us moving forward. And so I want to continue on something I had brought up last meeting. Actually, before the meeting started, I was asking the group, can the group help me calculate, how to figure out I need to have dirt delivered to put around my house. And we were basically coming up with how to come up with the formulas for an area to figure out how much volume I was going to need. And then after the meeting, I realized, why didn't I just do this through ChatGPT? And the whole thing would have been calculated in no time. So I'm going to show you the discussion I had with ChatGPT about this. And so hopefully everyone can see what I got going on here. My ultimate goal was, and you can see this in this section up here in gray, I need to determine how much dirt I need to put around my existing home. So I gave it the idea, the premise, this is what I want to do. And then it started coming back with all this, how to do it calculation wise. And so then I came back, here it tells you examples. So my thing is, I said, I want to fill the following areas, 7 feet, 8 inches deep from the sidewalk to the house. The length would be 41 feet long. I want to fill 8 inches high at the house and taper to 0 at the sidewalk. How much cubic yardage do I need? So I left that to ChatGPT. It came up with how it did the calculations and gave me the final number. Great. Okay, so now I have one spot on my house, but I'm looking all around the entire house. So I've got to go around this, all these little places. So I gave it this additional that's shown in gray here. Now add to that the additional measurements, 1 feet deep, 27 feet long, to 3 inches deep, and then add another section, and I gave it those dimensions, and I let it do the whole 9 yards, and basically it came up and told me that I needed 7 cubic yards of dirt around my house.
So that wasn't the whole 9 yards, it was just 7 yards.
That's right. It wasn't the whole 9 yards.
So I got a question here. The
Yes.
initial number, how close was I just doing it off the top of my head?
You know, I don't remember. I'd have to play back that video and see what you said, but I think you were probably fairly close. I think you did say something like 7 yards.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I wound up buying 10, just for grace, and let them deal with it. And it was pretty much enough for them to be able to do what I needed them to do. So
No, that's the easiest part, and buying it is the easiest part. Installing it is the tough part.
well, I paid a landscaper to do it.
Oh.
So, you know, I just told them what I wanted done, and then I kept what I was trying to do is get an idea how much dirt I would need in the beginning. So I don't want them to come in and say, "Oh yeah, you need 5 yards of dirt to do this," when I really needed 10. You know, so they'd want to do less work. So I wanted to do more work. That was
By the way, I went through a similar scenario, but you go to Scott's, you know, the fertilizer company, and they will use, I think, Google Earth, and then you take a you know, like you do a scribe pen of the areas you want. You go around, if it's walks or whatever, and you add up those areas, and they will record it, and then they'll even, you could talk to them. I've talked to them about asking what kind of fertilizer you want to plant where, but it's an aerial view of your plot.
Sure. So further on the calculation,
It's not a criticism. It's just, I'm just throwing it out there for other people, you know.
the other thing I had ChatGPT do was that I needed to calculate how much mulch was going to need to go on top of all that dirt that I put down. So I stated here, new subject. I want to calculate how much mulch I'll need, 3 inches deep, length of the areas are, and I gave it 3 different sections and how big they were going to be. And then I let the machine do all the heavy lifting, and it told me I needed 9 cubic yards.
Somebody was right when they said the 9 yards, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure were.
So
You do realize,
So in what
you
you
do
did
realize
there-
there was a different origin for that, but anyway.
Yeah, so, you know,
I know the origin of the
I
9
missed
yards.
out last month when I should have furthered this discussion on AI and using something as simple as ChatGPT to do these simple calculations that we do almost every other day, right?
what you did with ChatGPT, was that all a continuing discussion even in the mulch, or was that the
Correct.
mulch was a separate
Correct.
new topic?
It was a continual discussion. When I got to the part where I was going to talk about mulch, I told it I was going to do a new subject. So that was it. So I didn't want it to confuse adding the numbers from one section to the other. But that I didn't need to do it, but I did that.
But it remembered the previous discussion.
Oh yeah, yeah. It
mulch.
would it always remembers it. Remember, computers don't forget.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know if it knew how to
if
connect the two. How to
you
connect.
have,
This was a separate discussion. I didn't know it knew how to connect the two. Yeah.
it can connect the two. I could go back and say, all right, I previously discussed this. Can we do that?
Oh,
And if you set this up through an account, it memorizes and remembers this stuff in perpetuity. So you can come back to it months later and it's all still there.
okay.
It's interactive. It's like you and I talking to each other. You just say, change this to that, whatever. It's scary.
Anyone else? Okay, I thought
Well-
that was a pretty interesting thing and what I did on my come up with my calculations and how I missed the boat last month. So
9 yards.
9 yards.
yards. The length of the ammo belt on a fighter plane in World War II.
The way I've heard the origin was the whole 9 yards. In football, a first down used to be 9 yards.
No, it was the fighter plane, because the pilot would come back, ground crew would ask him how much ammo is left, and they would say, I used the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Pete. New subject. Shall we go into some of the other things I sent out on our list?
You don't have to play it, but toward the bottom, halfway down, is a really nice utility. Just to point it out to people, if you want a very quick utility that'll show you the contents of any file, you just hold down the space bar using the utility you described there.
What utility are you talking about?
One of your links, let me call it up here.
The free utility to preview files?
Yeah, right, correct. Yeah.
Okay, let's. Okay. All right, bear with me a second. I'll share this window.
It had a cutesy kind of name, I don't remember, but I did use it, and it does exactly. Yeah, you click on the name of the file, hold down the space bar, and the contents come up very quickly.
QuickLook.
Yes, QuickLook. Yeah, yeah. You don't have to play it. I just wanted to suggest to people when they have time, check it out.
Yeah, it's the second one from the top.
Okay, sorry.
Free preview utility.
Okay, so we're
Groovy Post.
Groovy Post. Is that who makes this? No.
That's a website, the URL groovypost.com.
Right, we're on that right now.
Yeah.
QuickLook's preview files Windows a better way. I'm looking at QuickLook. Oh, QuickLook is the name of the program.
Correct. Yep. And everything they say there is exactly right. It comes up very quickly.
Well, how is this different than using Windows Explorer and telling Windows Explorer to display the contents of a file?
Sometimes the file association gets corrupted. I have that with my Excel files. They're going to have to figure out what's wrong there. That's a different issue. And it loads way faster. For me, anyway, it did.
Okay.
You load it once, and I think it stays memory resident.
So I guess what I was seeing, in Windows Explorer, as you see here, I'm clicking on files, and on my right-hand pane, the miniature version of the file shows up, like a thumbnail.
All right, I'm still using Windows 10, so maybe the advantage for me is.
Oh no, this is from Windows 10 also.
Oh, okay.
You can see how I expanded this. Now I'm looking at it. I'm just wondering, what is the difference here? Is this similar? Anyone use this program, QuickLook?
I found it loading, well, it overlays. And it loaded very quickly.
Okay.
All right, I don't want to hog the.
No, you're not hogging. We're talking
time.
about this great program here, QuickLook. So it's called QuickLook. In a better way. So maybe it works the same way in the store, but you can use it for many file types.
That where you have that photo with the dog, that is really what it looks like. That it overlays, Well,
that's nice because, like, when you use Windows Explorer, as I was showing in this one, you see the file name and all this other stuff is really big, but on the right-hand panel, it's a small panel that displays the picture or the subject or whatever it is. So maybe that's better.
I can't help but notice that those railings are not safe.
Oh, those are the best of railings.
I'm an engineer and I can't help it. Sorry.
Yeah. Also, it shows the thumbnails of videos too. That's good.
yes, it does. Yeah. Um, just so if you've got 3 or 4 and you want to see one after the other very quickly, to close it out, call up the application again, close it out, takes a lot of time. It's, a few seconds, but through this, it's not calling up the native application. It's using this utility. So it displays quickly, closes quickly, displays the next one quickly. Just
So
mention,
you've been using this product for how long?
about 2 weeks. One of the gentlemen in this group, or the corresponding Chicago group had mentioned it. I said, you know what? I think I might be able to use that. And I went to the website, followed his suggestion. I said, wow, this is great. So I was thrilled to see your list contain it. Sorry, I didn't mean to take so much time.
You are not. This is. We definitely have a firsthand opinion on this. QuickLook.
Now, there is a similar feature that's been around since Windows 7 called Arrow Peak, which you can enable. But it gives little thumbnails. It doesn't give these larger previews. So this looks like it's an improvement on that.
So where do you get this thing from? Install from the Microsoft Store. Oh, you got to go to Microsoft.
It's a store app. It's a store app.
QuickLook. Download. Well, I might wind up on my machine.
It probably also
7.
You can download it.
Yeah, I'm doing so.
Yeah, what it says there is correct. Once it's in memory.
Does not work on Windows 10s devices. What are 10s devices?
10s. 10s is a very limited version of Windows 10. It was only put onto certain tablets, and basically there are no 10s machines any longer that I know of. People tended to convert them to Pro.
Yeah, I think they even use an ARM processor too, don't they?
They can. But then again, Windows 11 can use an ARM processor.
Yeah, not if you want compatibility.
No, you don't get compatibility mode.
I just want to let Carl know, don't worry about the dog's perfectly safe. He doesn't use the railings.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about me letting my dog out there first.
Sandra, just so that you know, when you use File Explorer, don't double click, because then you're asking the associated app to call it up. So
Okay.
you're just highlighting it with a single click and then hit the space bar. That's how quick it is.
I'm glad Harry brought it up. No apologies, Harry. I mean, that's how we learn.
Well, I wanted to pay back because one of you, I apologize for not remembering, one of you started me thinking about it. So it's only fair to say, yep, your advice was good. Thank you to the anonymous person, whoever you are.
Now, if you're in a browser, for example, Edge or Chrome, and you hover over a tab, you can see a preview of the page. And those are a little bigger than the thumbnails there used to be. This is for recent editions of Chromium, Chromium, and Edge Chromium. So there's all kinds of things going on now by way of giving you previews of stuff. What I'm wondering about this app is whether or not it, being a store app, whether or not it's sending all your previews over to Microsoft.
I would have no way of knowing. I don't.
So what you do with this program is what? Oh, you use the space.
Just single click to activate it. Don't double click.
So you just use the space bar when you hover over the item, and that makes it pop up. Got it. That's nice.
And you can, if it's several pages, you can scroll with your if you on your mouse if you have a scroll. Oh, and your question was about size. I don't know if you can make it larger.
Does it launch automatically when I start the machine?
I'm sorry, say again,
Does
start.
the application launch automatically when I reboot my machine?
It does in my case. I didn't do any installation. Yeah.
Okay.
So it just, the reason for my enthusiasm is that I might have 8 or 10 files, and I just want to recall very quickly which is which, without calling up the associated application. I'm not looking to edit it or whatever, and just to, highlight it, hit the space bar is maybe a half a second. My attention span allows me to do that 8 times in a row, so that's good.
And there's something else you can do. You can look inside of zipped archives. You don't have to unzip them.
That's good to have. That's handy.
If you download something, you can probably look into it too.
Okay. Someone like to pick out another subject item from my list?
How about second from the bottom? 10 best things you can do with Windows Power Toys.
Okay.
Power Toys is a favorite of mine, so I'm up for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. It is a good product. Okay, 10 of the best things you could do with Power Toys. One, they talk about installing it so we can get it from the Microsoft Store. And you can identify every color.
Yeah, you can skip that one.
Yeah, I don't understand why I need to know that. Rename multiple files at once. That's a good thing to have. Definitely, big power renamer.
And it works really well too.
Resize multiple images at once. I use this one quite a bit, or I have in the past too. Most frequently when I have to make pictures that I'm taking with my digital cameras that are like 20 megabytes or they're really big, and I need to shrink them down to something a little more, or 20 gigs, and I need to shrink down to something a little more transmissible. So I use this product to drop them down in size. They also have the ability to flip files too in there. So you can flip them, rotate them right or rotate them left just by highlighting them and then choosing file in file manager. Preview files quicker. Oh, look, didn't we just do that?
Yeah.
But this is different.
This is another way of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Keep any window on top.
Ever have a window you want it always on top, like maybe you're working on a spreadsheet and you don't want to bury it under other windows?
We see that Drew likes this one about the mouse utility.
Yes.
So you can always find it. I make my mouse pointer big, and I think there's a button you could push so it'll, I think if I hit the Alt key or something like that, one of them.
Yeah. And then
it's Control key. Hit that. And
you double tap the Control key.
Yeah. And it gives you an incoming radial, so you can find your mouse easier. Manage your keyboard. Oh, remap your keyboard. Boy, in the days gone past, I used to do that.
The only keyboard I've ever remapped is a Chromebook.
When I used to do data entry is when I used to remap them, because then I would put certain characters into certain keys that I needed to show up there, whether it be a control character or something, or a hidden character. But that's back in the day. Yeah, back in the days of DOS too, when you did those things. Manage windows easier. Fancy zones. What is that?
That is one of the best products if you have either a big monitor or multiple monitors. Are you familiar with, like, in Windows 11, when you move the mouse to the handlebar in the top upper right-hand corner of a window, you can have it snap left and right or snap up and down?
Right.
Well, this lets you create zones on your different monitors in different locations of where you would like to persistently place applications, so that from day to day, every time you launch an app, it automatically opens to a specific spot on your monitor.
Oh, okay.
I got lost. What items are you guys discussing?
Power toys.
Oh, Power Toys. Okay.
Right.
I have to open it up because obviously,
Number 7.
All right.
Right.
And so that was fancy zones.
Yep.
Remember every Windows shortcut. Boy, that's a tough one. Windows does have a lot of shortcuts.
Mhm.
I do use some. I don't know about other people. We all have our favorites. Anyone got a favorite Windows shortcut key?
Delete.
yeah, sketch, snap and sketch.
Mine
Whatever.
is the Windows key and the letter D, because that will bring you back to your desktop every time. And so sometimes you get where you can't flip around and see where your desktop is. That works.
I added back a Windows 7 feature that you can get back in Windows 11 if you set it up. Where on the far right-hand side, the very far right-hand side of your taskbar, if you click, it'll minimize everything and show your desktop.
Oh, really?
But you have to add that back in Windows 11. It's not there natively.
Yeah.
What's that feature called?
It's the show desktop. Is it?
Yeah, it's called a show desktop.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does it do? It just removes the taskbar momentarily?
No,
No. It minimizes all your windows.
Here we are. It is under personalization, taskbar behaviors in Windows 11. Taskbar behaviors. So you just right click on the taskbar, go to taskbar behaviors, scroll down a ways, and open up taskbar behaviors. It has the alignment, which I changed. It has share any window from my taskbar, and it has select the far corner of the taskbar to show the desktop. And it also has combined taskbar buttons and hide labels. So you can control a lot of what that taskbar will do. And you can give it back a lot of the things it would do in Windows 7.
Okay. Next topic we have in our group, or another power toy that somebody saw that they liked that we didn't talk about. I think we got them all, right?
I'm going into Power Toy settings now to look and see if there's anything quickly I can. There is, for those of you who have two computers, if you would like to have one mouse and keyboard across two computers, there is a feature in Power Toys called Mouse Without Borders. And you can have up to 4 Windows computers in your little group. And you create a security key that allows each computer to access each other's screens. And you can basically take your mouse and slide it off of the screen on computer 1 and move it to computer 2. And as soon as the mouse is on computer 2, your keyboard is now assigned to computer 2. And that's a neat little utility to have.
Was that
Essentially analogous to a KVM switch.
It's kind of like a KVM switch, yeah. Another one that I like is called the text extractor. It's a simple tool. You use the Windows logo or menu key, the start button, and then Shift and the letter T for text. So it's menu Shift T, and you can then use that to extract text from any image that has text written on it.
By the way, Drew, Windows 11 since 24H2 can do that in Notepad.
You can do it in Notepad,
Yes.
and it can also do it in Clip and Sketch.
I mean Sketch, Clip and Sketch, not Notepad.
Yeah.
It's Clip and Sketch. It's
Yeah.
not Clip and Sketch. It is Snipping
Clip and
Tool.
something.
Snipping
tool. Windows snipping tool.
They renamed
Yeah.
it for about the 4th time.
Yeah.
The Snipping Tool. I was
Drew?
wrong about that.
Drew?
Snipping Tool can extract and then paste it into Notepad.
Yes.
Drew, question.
Yes.
Yes.
Keyboard thing. Does it use Bluetooth between the? How do you have to network your machines?
They just have to be on the same Wi-Fi network.
Okay.
Boy, this would be something to experiment, right, Pete?
Yeah, considering I got like 3 machines here and I'm waving mice and keyboards all the way around all the time.
Yeah.
Can you hear the
This would
keyboard too, or just the mouse? Drew.
this would probably treat
It's the mouse and the keyboard. Mouse and keyboard.
Okay.
It doesn't move the monitor over.
No, it doesn't do any heavy lifting.
And what's the program that makes that happen?
It's called Cache.
Cache, C-A-C-H-E?
Yep.
Okay.
No, I was being facetious.
It's Mouse Without Borders, right?
It
Oh,
takes money to
Cache.
move the monitor.
It
C-A-S-A.
takes money to move the monitor.
Drew, what's the link for Power Tools? Because that's not one of the ones that Sanford
Toys.
put out.
It's called
Power
Power
Toys.
Toys.
Power
Toy. And
Is
it's in
that-
the Microsoft store.
Okay. Because he had a link to Power Toys, one of those 10.
Yeah, you can get it off the internet directly from GitHub, or you can install it through the Microsoft store.
Which would be the good place to get it.
If you get it from GitHub, you get sometimes a slightly more advanced version, but it really doesn't make that much difference.
Yeah.
You know, the problem with me, all these things is like going on YouTube. You look for something and on the side, there's about a dozen things to distract you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do sort of have to keep a cheat sheet of which Power Toy does what. It has an index.
What keyboard shortcut brings up the list of shortcuts that you're supposed to remember?
There is one.
Shortcuts remind me of the command prompts and before you had what you see, what you get. You control D or control B for bold and control something or alt something for underscore. That's when I first started using a green screen computer. I never forget trying to edit a email. Had to use all those shortcuts.
All you're doing is you're holding down the Windows key, and if Power Toys is active, it'll bring up all your shortcuts. If you hold it down without it being active, you'll bring up your start menu.
Shortcut guide. Menu Shift slash.
Oh, menu Shift slash. So
Yeah,
the Win
because it
key.
just brings up the Windows
Menu Shift slash. If you can remember that shortcut key, brings up the list of shortcut keys.
Windows key slash.
It's the Windows key, the Shift key, and slash.
Oh, Windows key.
Windows
Shift
shift
key
slash,
slash.
which is actually, if it's shift slash, it's a question mark.
Yes.
Right.
Well, that's true. There's two slashes though.
Windows
So
question
it,
mark.
it actually makes more sense to think of it that way, because you're bringing that menu up because you're trying to remember something, and question mark is more related to memory than a slash is.
Yeah.
I tried it now. It doesn't do anything. Do you have to be in desktop?
Probably.
Well, you have to have Power Toys running.
Oh,
It has to be active in your tray.
duh.
Power Toys can be set to fire up with Windows.
Mm-hmm.
I got a non-computer question. Anybody have any implants done? Your
Dental implant? No.
yeah.
Just avoided it this time.
Yeah, we've got to stay on subject here. Okay. Okay, back on my list. I actually have an item that's not on the list that I wanted to show to the group. And let me just pull this up real quick. And where did that video go? Here, not that one, not this. Oh, darn it, wrong one. Stop share. Let me get the right screen up. That's the one I wanted. Okay. Real quickly, a feature that not everybody may know is available on Apple iPhones. I'm assuming this is available on Android, but I don't know how to use it. And that is the ability to record a phone call locally on your phone. And when you invoke this, Apple, the phone itself will give the disclaimer stating that this call is now being recorded. And then it goes and record it. And then when you hit stop, it will stop recording the call. Why you may need this? Well, you know, we often get calls from solicitors, or for somebody who wants to give us some important information. You wish you could record it or keep a copy of it. The way to do it with an iPhone, and I don't need to demonstrate this, but I just need to show you, if you could see my mouse pointer in the upper left-hand corner, when you're on a call, you'll see the appearance of a sound wave in the upper left-hand corner. All you need to do is press that button. That's it. And then when you're done, press it again and it'll stop recording. And it's going to record it solely locally on your phone and make it available for you.
Well, does make the announcement continuously or
no?
Or
it only makes it at the beginning. It doesn't need to make it continuously. Only needs to make it once. One of the things that I found is that this feature often gets turned on inadvertently. When I'll have my phone with me and I'll be talking to somebody and I put the phone in the back pocket and the phone screen turns on, but I start, instead of butt dialing, I start butt recording somebody. So it's happened.
How do you find the recording after the fact?
It's in your notes section on the phone, on your iPhone. And if you don't know how to find it, just search. There's this quick search on there.
Well, there's a YouTube thing that you have on the screen now, right? How to record.
Right, how to record your calls on an iPhone. I do have that up here because I was trying to get this image here of the squigglies in the upper left-hand corner, or the sound wave something, which is the part that you tap to start and to stop the recording. Now,
for Android, there's an app in the App Store called Call Recorder Cube.
Okay.
And I just ChatGPT'd that, and it's supposed to be able to record phone calls.
I mean, we often get calls in which will receive a call and that service is saying your call is being recorded. I've often wanted to hit that same record button on my end, just so they know they're not alone. I don't know.
I had to do that just a couple months ago, but I had to I use a feature on I got my wife's hand-me-down iPhone. There's just a feature on there called voice recorder, which I use. I had to use a different phone call to make a call about a
Right.
legal technical issue, and I wanted to record it. So
There you
I just
go.
recorded it on the other thing. But this is built in while you're making the call. You can do it. That's much nicer. I'd like to
Oh,
do that.
much nicer, and it
Also
records
makes the
both
announcement. I like that. Yeah.
it records both incoming and outgoing. It's handy, it's there, and apparently this one, October of last year was when this went in as a feature, because I was talking to my buddy and he didn't know about this thing, and I kept hitting this button. He's like, what the heck is going on? And why are you doing this? How are you doing this? And then we figured it out because I kept hitting this by accident. Once
Okay, so it might be a feature on my wife's newer iPhone, but maybe not on my really old one. Okay.
you know what? If your phone is updated to a current version, it may have it. That's what I could, tell you, unless that phone is no longer receiving updates.
Yeah.
I use a voice recorder on my Android phone. I listen to a show that comes on at 1 a.m., 5 midnight your time, called Coast to Coast AM. And they have avant-garde guests on there. And I'll turn on the voice recorder and record that particular guest.
Okay.
Well, this meeting, we've had some of the most interesting topics ever in this meeting, I swear.
This is what Tips and Tricks is great at. It
Yeah.
always just comes up with these bizarre things that we can talk about. There are great information here. So I believe there's a couple more topics left. I was not able to extricate a lot of topics off of Tim's FYIs this year or this month. So the pickings are a little slim. Anyone?
Well, I'm looking right now. The last entry on your list says this free app turned my tablet into a perfect second screen. And I read that already, and I've downloaded and installed the software on my phone and my computer. I'm just trying to get it to work.
Okay, well, that says it right there. So let's go to this one and see.
Well, wait, I think Drew should give the presentation since he's already installed it.
Okay, meet Glide X and setup. Perfect second screen. You need the app. Make the most. Okay.
Yeah, basically it's advertised. The article is about using you're not going to ever use your phone as a second screen. It's bad enough as a first screen. But if you have a tablet like an iPad or an Android tablet, you can use your tablet as a second screen using this software program. There are other programs in the App Store that let you do the same thing. I don't know which one's the best, but I'm going to play with this one now that I've heard about it.
Right now, I'm using something really sophisticated with my TV. It's called a HDMI cable. I got the laptop connected to the mic screen, TV screen.
Yeah.
I'm old school.
Well, this is for a different purpose, though. This is repurposing your tablet.
No, I know. I mean, I have any Zoom call. It's on my large screen TV and the sound system, but I still, if you're going to do a Zoom call, you have to be close to the tablet to talk. You can't talk to the TV.
Very true.
Oh.
Well, this looks interesting. And I think, Drew, you can demonstrate it maybe next month somehow.
Yeah, I would do it now, but I'm doing it by the seat of my pants.
Okay, no,
So
next
next
week.
month.
Next month, you can say, well, I played with it and it worked great, or it didn't work great. So
Yeah, I mean, I have my phone screen mirrored up onto my desktop right now, but that's nothing fancy to show anybody. I'll see what else it can do and do a more thorough overview.
okay,
I've got all,
Sanford,
yeah.
when you share your screen, my screen, it's way blowing up. Have you got your screen set up so it's magnified or something?
Oh, probably because I have old man eyes.
Well, hey, Wayne, but look at this.
Um,
At the top of your window, when he shares at the top of the window, you can change the view of what he's sharing. Maybe you
I
could
know
share
when I
stuff.
click on it,
Let me
but
see. Does anyone else notice that too? Here, let me try.
do that again.
I've got 6 windows. I love it.
Okay, so
One of them blows it up like Wayne is saying. At the top of the
It's
screen center, it says view
it's center.
options. Yeah, it's top of the screen center of his
Oh,
display.
there I see. Yeah, some way or another I clicked on it, set at 290%.
One
okay,
of you
so it was on
really
his
zoom
side,
in.
There
not
we
my
go.
side.
Okay,
That's it.
I like this
thank you.
better. I feel like I'm on that
All
quiz
right.
show where they had everybody on the blocks, what they call it, squares or something. Remember that TV show Squares?
Hollywood Squares?
Squares.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so this
I'm
free
going to,
app turned my
gonna,
tablet into a perfect second screen.
I'm going to have to duck out. I got to take my boy for a walk. This is our regular time. It's, it's,
We'll see you next
I've
month.
got all I can absorb. I'm full top overload. Thank you very much. It was worth the price of admission and then some.
Hey, send your money to the
So-
club. If you really like it, feel free to send us more.
I'm still running on my
Yeah.
double renewal in February. Listen.
We'll take the extra.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good night, Carl.
Good night,
night.
Carl.
very good.
All right, we got time for one more.
Sure.
If anyone can find something on the list.
Hidden suite tools.
Or if
productivity.
someone has something else.
I can't think of anything else. I've done enough
Okay.
talking already tonight.
I know you have.
Yeah.
How about Windows Performance Monitor? I know we've showed this before. Performance Monitor, share that one. And that is part of Windows. I found an interesting thing about Performance Monitor. I was not able to get it to show up on my server visually. It would just show nothing. And I think it could be because I have a graphics card conflict, which I don't understand. Sorry, I'm babbling on a thought here. So does anyone like to use Performance Monitor for seeing how their system's going? I mean, Drew, when you're doing your virtual machines, do you monitor the performance on there, or you just drive right through it?
I monitor it based on how sluggish it is. But now that I've got 64 gigs of RAM and 2 hard drives, my machine is running a lot faster.
So that laptop was able to take DIMMs?
Yes.
So you swapped out the old RAM?
Yes, I unplugged the 32 gigs and put in 64.
2 64s. No, what? Oh, okay.
230. I took out 2 16s and put in 2 32s.
Okay, got it. And then was that, how'd you upgrade the hard drive?
I didn't do an upgrade. It had a second slot.
Okay. So did it take a standard 2.5 inch or an M.2?
It took one of those little flat M.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
How easy was it, Drew? I mean, is it like removing the bottom panel on and just plugging something in, or you
Well,
take it
what
apart?
I'll give you, I'll give you a trick. The group of the group that I belong to in Sarasota has a refurbishing group for old computers, and there's a bunch of guys that are on the board of directors that work there. And what I did is I went to Amazon and I let my fingers do the walking, and I bought the product, the memory and the drive, and then I took my laptop over to the refurb shop and let one of my buddies who opens and closes laptops every day open mine and put the memory and disk in.
Probably took them no time to do too.
It took them 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it took me 10 minutes to take the screws out of the bottom and another half an hour to get frustrated figuring out how to get the cover off. I couldn't figure out I took the screws out of the bottom of my laptop, but I couldn't figure out how to separate the cover.
Yeah.
He knew how to get the cover off.
There is a technique to doing these, depending upon the machine.
And it had all kinds of snaps, and he ended up using this little thin credit card type tool to get into the crevices and unsnap the snaps.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
Well,
you could risk.
I didn't know they have snaps. So yeah, I didn't know that. Okay.
Tab snaps
Yeah.
is the way that they go on a lot of machines now.
And if you don't have one of these little extractor tools,
You're
you could
busted.
risk breaking them.
And then
If you
it's
just try and
loose.
pull the cover, if you try and pull the cover off the bottom, you're going to break it. And that's why I took it to somebody else that, does it for a living.
Yeah, they have YouTube videos on how to do it properly, and you almost always end up going to places like iFixit and buying tools. Whereas if you know somebody, let them have the tools. Let them buy the tools.
Yeah, they already had the tools. Yeah.
They already have them, so put them to some use.
I
Slip them
spent a half an hour on YouTube trying to figure out how to watch a video to get the cover off my laptop. But, the video shows you a picture of a guy taking the laptop off, the cover off, but it's not that simple.
No, you have to do a lot of freeze frames. Or else go to iFixit and get their step-by-step, which has stills. And even then, it's
Yeah.
not always too clear. I know
Yeah,
this.
I mean,
I know this from experience because I took apart a Chromebook and I replaced the battery and took out the write protect screw. And doing that with a Chromebook that's a thin form factor is an adventure.
Yeah, so I do the heavy lifting on things that I have expertise in. I let other people do the heavy lifting on their expertise. I fall short on pulling covers off laptops.
Okay, anyone got any last comments or questions?
No.
If not, I will adjourn tonight's meeting.
I will
And
say
stop the
aloha
recording.
from over here.